I want to introduce another friend who I got to know about a year ago. I got to meet him, Pastor Binkley, at his work. I got to see his office and where he works. And I've just got to know him so well as a brother in Christ. And that's why I'm so excited for him to come. And I just want to tell you just a little bit about him. So Pastor Ryan Binkley is the president and CEO of Generational Group located in Richardson, Texas, with over 300 employees. His wife and him, Ellie, are also the founders of Create Church, a multi-ethnic, multi-generational church in Richardson, Texas. As he is the lead pastor, his deep passion is to see church members of all walks of life discover and live out their purpose. He holds a BBA at the University of Texas and an MBA from Southern Methodist University. Ryan and Ellie were married in 1999 and they have 5 children. They chose to adopt their youngest child from South Korea, where Ellie was born before immigrating to the U.S. with her parents. It is one more way their faith has led them to reach across boundaries, finding unity where others might see differences. So please give a warm Northwest Iowa welcome to the Binkleys. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
Welcome, Ellie. I think there's a mic on your chair.
It's so great to have you here. And I love your story about what happened. We met, it's interesting how you bump into people. We were in D.C. A couple weeks ago, and all of a sudden there was Pastor Binkley, and we had a great conversation together, and it was just wonderful to see you. And now to see your wife Ellie here in the wonderful state of Iowa, in this beautiful weather of Northwest Iowa, that you're here, coming out of Texas.
It's just like this in Texas all the time, so I feel right at home. It's great to be here. Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, for those that don't know you two, could you just sort of introduce yourself to Northwest Iowa and elaborate sort of on your background and what got you here?
Wow. Okay, do you want me to start, Ellie? Okay, I'll start. So my name is Ryan Binkley. Many of you have heard of our campaign and our message, but many of you haven't. And I'm a CEO of a company that I co-founded with my dad, a family business, about 20 years ago. And we do merger and acquisition services for middle market companies. So we started helping business owners sell companies, and we created a model, and it took off real quick. And so now we have several companies, a growth consulting firm, a wealth management firm, a software engineering company, restaurants. We have a few things. And about 400 employees now across 16 offices across the nation. And we're pastors. So Ellie and I, we started in ministry as friends before we got married. And so we've always done ministry. We did young adult ministry for 17 years before we started our church about 10 years ago. And this is our life. 5 kids, 13 to 23. As you mentioned, we adopted our youngest. And, God really spoke to our heart to enter this race for a message. And really the message was this, that America needs an economic revival and America needs a spiritual revival. And the time for that revival is now. It's time for something different in America. And that's a little bit about us. Ellie, you want to say something?
Yeah, we were back at the Capitol a few months ago, and somebody asked me, you have such a busy, full life. What are you doing? Why are you in this race? And immediately, the first thing that came to my heart, and I shared, is that we're doing this for the next generation. We don't have to look too far around our world to see that something must change. And Ryan and I believe that change is that we need God back in this country. We need godly leadership. And it's truly for the next generation, not just for our sons and daughters, but for yours and the grandchildren to come. This is the most beautiful, amazing nation in the world, even now. And as a first-generation immigrant, I am proof that the American dream is real, and that's why my parents immigrated. This past May marked 50 years of my family immigrating. And I asked my dad, I said, okay, how do you feel? So he's 93 now. And I said, how do you feel being here 50 years? And his first word was, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to this country. I don't take it for granted even now.
Wow, that's special. We do truly live in a wonderful country. Yes, thank you for those words.
Yeah. Seeking the Lord's will has always been a priority for our family, too. We want to be willing to go where God calls us and faithfully serve him in order to bring him all the glory and honor that he deserves. Often God needs to close doors sometimes, as you found out, and open new ones for us. I remember when Randy was running for Congress, and the Lord was asking me to make a career change, and our future was very uncertain at that time, and we were not sure what we were supposed to do, but we felt the Lord telling us, do you trust me and will you obey? And so, have there been times in your life that, you have felt God, leading you to new opportunities, and you talked a little bit, but maybe you could expand on, what was the main decision that you decided, yes, we are going to, I am going to run for president?
Wow, okay, so this gets back to, these moments you're just talking about, God moments where God shifts you. It's happened a few times in my life. I gave my life to the Lord in 1992. I was a wreck in college, but God came in and he saved me. And it was about 1995. I was all business after college, working with Procter & Gamble and Boston Scientific. And then I went on a mission trip, and I had one of those God moments. And the God moment was, I'm called to ministry. And so then I began to set the next few years of my life up for that. And when Ellie and I got married, we both ditched corporate America, got asked to come on staff at a church. We took about a 70% pay cut, I think, and then we both came on staff at a church doing young adult ministry, missions, inner city ministry in Atlanta. And then a tragedy hit my home, and I thought I would never put on a suit again. I thought I was going to be a pastor of missions the rest of my life, and that was just 24 years ago. And then my brother was killed by a drunk driver 22 years ago. And we prayed. He ran a small business with my dad in Dallas, and God spoke to us again, saying, this is part of your journey. You'll pastor again. And so we just kind of took that step. That's when I went back and got my MBA. Ellie's had similar moments, but God moments, the Bible says, I think in Ephesians 2, that we're his workmanship, we're his handiwork, and he's got a plan for us. And it's something he prepared long beforehand. And you know what we don't know beforehand? We don't always know the last chapter. But we know he has got something special, and we're navigating these journeys. And so it was about 8 years ago. I'm doing business life, our company's growing. We started a church, same kind of moments continued. And then God spoke to me. It came in several dreams, that a message for our country, run for office. I'm going to tell you something. And I was like, what is this? Are you serious? I mean, I was not a politician. I'm still not a politician. Thank God. I don't know that we need more politicians, but anyway, he began speaking to me about our country. And so those came over and over. I ignored them for a few years, and then it came just more clear, and that now's the time. And so that's how it came. And then we just kept following it. And I think just like, if you remember the Indiana Jones movie where they step out on the invisible bridge, if you remember that scene.
Gotta have faith.
This is what it feels like for us. We're walking on an invisible bridge, and sometimes not until we pick our leg up does that little next plank come down, but that's what it's felt like. And so we're walking this out for America, for you, for Iowa. I believe there's so much at stake, but I think it's a movement of faith because God wants to do something in America that's different. And that's what I'm hearing. There's something coming we're not ready for, and he's sharing with me some things about our budget, healthcare, families, faith, the hatred and division in our country, what he wants to change, but that's a little bit about it.
Thank you for sharing the story.
That is wonderful. Ellie, you got dragged into this with your husband. That's a big step. So obviously this is new to you. You're on the campaign trail. You have 5 children. So how does this play out? I mean, do you take your children with you periodically? Can you just tell us about your children, their ages, their activities a little bit? Just to get to know your family a little bit.
Absolutely. So we have 5. Our oldest is 23. He just graduated from Baylor University this spring, and he's working on his MBA at SMU. We have a daughter who's about to be 22. She's a senior at Baylor also. She's doing marketing and PR. We have a sophomore at TCU, a daughter, and then 2 boys at home, a sophomore and 7th grade. So the way our family has always been, is that, Ryan he's just such a leader that he gets a thought or something, that God is speaking to him about, and he'll share it with me if it's something really out of the blue like this 8 years ago. And he would talk about it, and I would be like, well, I haven't heard anything yet, okay? So I don't know. But over time, he never does anything that's really big without us being in agreement. And so we both pray, and I felt like I heard the Lord say, you know what, this is something I have for you. And once we have that, then we gather our kids, and we say, okay, we've got some big news, and we want you to pray, and how do you feel? And they are 100% on board. They are so excited about this journey. They are young adults, and they know, looking at this country, being on the college campuses, all the craziness that's out there, and they know themselves that God needs to be back. And so along this journey, over the summer, they traveled with us quite a bit. We traveled, I'll travel with him for some of the bigger events, but the joy in this journey has truly been meeting Iowans. I mean, I've never been to Iowa until this time, honestly, but we vacationed at Lake Okoboji this summer. It was so beautiful. And then just meeting people that love God, that love their country, that love their families. It's like kindred spirits. And so it's really been a home away from home, and I'm just so grateful that you have Ryan Binkley, who, a lot of people look at him and go, what qualifies you? You've never had political experience. Who do you think you are jumping into this? And I say, you know what? Mr. Trump really broke that barrier. He had no political experience. He made the way. And now we have this man of God who truly has a vision from God. And I know we're about to be married 25 years on January 2nd. He has led us in this way, stepping out in faith. And I know that when he says, this is what God said, I trust that. He is a great leader. And so here we are following all 6 of us and 2 dogs. So it's an exciting journey, truly.
It's great to have your kids involved, right? I mean, it's great to have your kids. I'm not sure if they do different things on the campaign trail with you. As you noted, they come with you periodically, but it's so special.
Pastor Ryan, you've spent a lot of time in Iowa. Randy and I love it here. We're both born and raised here. We feel that Iowa's strong faith and family values, their work ethic, safe communities, and opportunities for the next generation make this an amazing place to live, work, and raise a family. So on the campaign trail, what have you found to be the key concerns of Iowans? And if you were elected president, how would you create solutions to these issues?
Wow. Well, the number one thing, we've been to all 99 counties. We hit that about a month ago. So now we're going back. And at some big events, a lot of small events. I mean, every pizza ranch, every single one, I think, coffee shop in town. I've eaten so many donuts. If somebody gives me one more big pecan roll, I don't know what I'm going to do. But anyway, because I've gained some weight here on this thing.
Have you had pizza?
Yeah.
Pizza ranch?
And all the fried chicken you can imagine. So anyway, I'm back now on a diet. But, everyone, it doesn't matter who they are. There's a couple things that's really impacting us all, and I think we all know what it is. It's inflation. And how are we making it today? On our very first trip here, we got off the plane and got to the hotel, and an Uber driver picked us up. And it's a young lady that had just got a job at John Deere, good job, but she was just getting out of the probationary time, and she's picking us up. She's been working full-time for several months, but had to work 20 to 30 hours extra on her only days off to make it work. How many people do we know are having to do just that, take extra shifts? One of the biggest things I've enjoyed is speaking to young people as well, and college students. I've been with a lot of young Republicans. We were with Iowa State, just about 60 students just a few days ago. Most young people think this is normal. They don't know anything less. They haven't had an environment like we had 20 years ago. Right now, 50% of young people are having to come out of college and live with their parents. They think that's normal. It's not normal. When I got out of college, I had an apartment. It wasn't a huge salary, but I had an apartment and paid for it, and a car, and I had money left over each month. And now we're in an environment where it's because of our spending, Randy. We are spending $2 trillion in debt every year. We're going to be $50 trillion in debt in about 6 years. And so this is what's This is the reason I'm in this race. I'm an economist. I see things from financial. I'm likely, I'm sure everybody, but I'm probably the only person that's still currently making payroll every single week for everybody. Vivek may be doing that, I'm not for sure, but I'm making payroll every week. We have a couple hundred volunteers at our church and that kind of thing. People's lives we see every day, they're struggling. And this thing that we're doing in the economy by printing so much money. By the way, would you like to have one of those printing machines, money printers? I'm checking in for you. But they don't trust us to have one, and I don't trust them to have one anymore, because what it's doing, it's causing the poor and the rich for the gap to get broader. People talk about the wage gap or the wealth gap between the poor and the rich. It's not because of tax codes. It's because we keep printing money, and the poor and the lower middle class pay the exact same that we do for food, shelter, clothes. Their rents go up, and it's eating away every dollar in their bank account, so I'm running for them. And I'm running for the next generation. I'm running so you can have the same opportunity that we had when we got out of college, that you could get an apartment. A few years later, you can get a house. That's in jeopardy today, and we're gonna run to see this changed. And we actually put together a 7-year plan to do it, and so that's what I'm sharing, that's what I'm seeing. People are scared. They're going, are we gonna get out of this? And how? And then what's the division, the hatred? It's not found here in Iowa, but we see it all over, and how are we gonna end that?
So you bring up the debt, and obviously this is probably my most important issue right now. I mean, we are $34 trillion in debt. It's going to be on the backs of our kids and our grandkids. And if we don't resolve this, I mean, we are in a debt spiral, and it's going to be catastrophic.
Exactly
I mean,
right.
it's going to be extremely serious. So can you just explain, just very quickly, 1 minute, how do we get out of it?
Okay, there's a couple things we need to do. And people ask me all the time, Ryan, how are you going to balance the budget? Randy, we have a 7-year plan to do it. We run about 20%, 25% over budget. We're $2 trillion in debt this year. Here's how we'll do it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to tackle the number one biggest expense in our budget, and that's healthcare. Many people do not know this, but it is actually about 20% of all GDP now. The U.S. government spends $4.5 trillion in healthcare alone, Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, all other subsidies. And here's the problem. Healthcare inflation is 40% higher than regular inflation for 20 years. 40% higher. Regular inflation is about 50% higher than wage inflation. So our wages over the last 23 years do not go up with inflation, and they do not go up with health care. I was in Osceola just a couple days ago meeting with a retired doctor in his 80s. He said, Ryan, in 1968, I started practice, and he goes, the charge to deliver a child was $100. $100. It's $12,000 today. The inflation number on currency is about $900. So at the same rate, a delivered child should be about $900 or $1,000, but it's $12,000 to $13,000 today. And by the way, if you want to pay cash because it's a broken system, they'll cut it in half for you. And it's the only thing that's that broken. It's corrupt in America. It's filled with monopolies. So first thing we'll do is get the waste out of healthcare. We have launched the first ever, I think, Republican-led healthcare plan for America that actually gets rid of monopolies, gets rid of waste, brings price transparency back. And when we do that, we can save probably 3 to 5% a year. Big Pharma, we spend twice as much on healthcare than any other nation in the world. Canada pays 28 cents on the dollar for drugs that we do. They can buy generics because Big Pharma pays off our lobbyists and politicians and presidents, by the way, and we give patent extensions 10 and 15 years longer. So what we'll do, we'll reform healthcare, we'll get rid of earmarks, we'll use wisdom, and you know what? We'll fight for America, and I'll communicate to America, just like this, what debt does. It destroys your savings account.
Ditto. I hear you 100%. I got to get you in front of Ways and Means. We got to talk about
Let's
healthcare.
go, Randy. I like
Absolutely. We got to get you to D.C. Lynette.
Yes, Ellie, in your introduction, you kind of talked about your background and as a young child, how you immigrated to America from South Korea. Could you just tell us a little bit about what your experience was like, and then what led you both to your decision to adopt a child from South Korea?
Yes, so my dad was the interpreting officer during the Korean War between General Trudeau and the Korean general on the ground. And that afforded him the opportunity to begin the immigration process. So he moved from Korea to Japan. He was in line for 15 years until his paperwork came up to the top. And even, you know, let language be a barrier. You know, I understand a little bit of Korean, but we didn't speak it in the house. So as we grew and really, getting just engulfed in the culture of America and the love for this nation had just anchored me. And then plus my dad was the first Christian in a family of Buddhists. There was a Presbyterian missionary that came and shared the gospel. And at 18, he converted. And so all that laid the foundation. But when they immigrated, they left me in Korea with my grandmother until I was 7 years old. So I did not know I had parents. I didn't know I had brothers until my grandmother passed away. And one day, this woman appears at the house saying, "Well, I'm your mother, and we're going to go to America." So I was like, "Wow, okay." So, growing up in that, and then now, all these years later, we're married, and every time I would hear the story of adoption, I would just weep. And I felt like God was saying, "Ellie, this is something that I have for you and Ryan." And when I would talk about it with Ryan, it was definitely something that he was all in for. And so I think even though I wasn't necessarily adopted, I still feel like, I could relate to, a child from Korea. And so that's what we did. We started, moving in that direction. And it has been the greatest joy. He is truly a Binkley and definitely such a gift to our family. But in that, as we look at this country and we look at the topic of abortion, this is something that is really huge on our hearts, is that we want to promote a culture of life. That not only is there a culture of life for the baby, but there's love and support for the mother that's in a point of crisis. We have to get into the foster system and just revamp it to where there are people of integrity, people of morals that are fostering these children, and then allowing adoption to be more affordable. Why does it have to cost $50,000 to go through adoption? If we can get churches and private charities and organizations and promote it as a culture, then when the woman is in crisis, a teenager or even a 27-year-old who's in crisis, their first thoughts will not be, "Oh my goodness, I've got to go to Planned Parenthood," because that is not health care. I'm going to go turn to the Crisis Pregnancy Center. I'm going to go to this church because I've heard that they really help women in need. And not just the women, but the men, the dads, that are asking for the woman, for the girlfriend, "Please don't do this."
Thank you. Thank you.
So we only got a few minutes left.
Yep.
We should get a question from a student yet if we can.
Okay. All right. We are going to, we have a question from Derek Vanderscaff. He's an agribusiness major. Derek, can you raise your hand? His question is, because the role of president is influential and representative of the United States as a whole, how do you plan on showing Christ in your day-to-day work?
How do I plan to what?
How do you plan on showing Christ in your day-to-day work?
I really see this, that's so much broken in our country, as we just shared, economically, but as Ellie talked about in so many ways, culturally. Right now we have a huge problem, and the Republican Party has a problem too, because we have a great poverty gap in America. Urban America is really struggling. You may know this, but the Republican Party lost 46 of the top 50 cities and biggest cities by population, and we don't really have a message for the poor. So I really think as president, one of the things I can do is obviously lead the fact where financially we can all have an even foothold. But I think we can also do a lot in owning our cities today. So Jesus' greatest message was this: love your neighbor. And I've been asking college students that hate politics anyway, because most of them really don't vote Republican either, would you join me in a movement to love your neighbor? Can you see a different movement in education? Because one of the visions I have for education is helping the most poor actually have an opportunity that many other people just don't have today, or they don't have today. And many of them are struggling in reading. For instance, 1 out of 6 blacks in urban America are reading at the 8th grade reading level. It's only about 40% across the board anyway, 50% reading and doing math proficiently. I want to start a volunteer movement with college students. I'm asking college students everywhere, would you join me in a movement? Would you give a few hours a week and donate it to the life of one child? And I think if we can show this and demonstrate this, I've been volunteering at my church for in some way, 15 or 20 hours a week for a long time. We can give a few hours a week. We can change the culture of America. You can change the culture and the life of a child, and we do that, we can change the world. So I would just try and show this. Let's lead by example. Our daughter's doing this now. Catherine, she's helping just mentor a young child 1 day a week, just going and spending life. We can change the world if we do this. And I think it's just about seeing the unseen people. As president, I'm not running for just to be the president of the Republican Party. I'm running to be president of the United States of America. And we have such a fist fight between the right and left, and we need to fight against evil. But I do believe this, the world's wanting to see us healed. You know, Abraham Lincoln said this, he said, the greatest danger that could come to our country is not gonna come from China, elsewhere, and he didn't mention those nations, but abroad, but he said this, it's gonna come from ourselves. We ourselves would be its author and finisher. So I would lead by example, to love the most hurting, the most vulnerable, see them, help them practically, teach vocational trades. Let's help them have an opportunity to see this, a true Republican alternative to socialism, because that's what they need. They need a true reason to see it, but we have to show them or it won't resonate.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for those comments. We got about 30 seconds left, so
Okay.
take us home. 30 seconds, final pitch to Iowans for January 15. Why should they vote for you?
Iowa, I want to thank you, Randy, and thank you, Lynette, for having us here. Thank you, Iowa, for being the voice, I think, also for the unseen. You know, right now, there's a system out there trying to keep voices like this about an economic revival and a spiritual revival from being heard. And I really appreciate Iowans because there's a lot of people out there in big media that doesn't want to hear it, and even some forces here in Iowa, some, not though Jeff Kaufman. I want to thank Jeff Kaufman. He's helped us out. He's helped get this voice out. Also, it's just time for Iowa to know that many forces are trying to keep your voice from being heard. When they try and raise levels of debate levels, I've got 81,000 donors. And so it's time to let the 81,000 people and the people of Iowa to hear, you know what, that we want to see something different in our country. And I'm really running for this reason, that for the unseen people of America, to get our budget back in line, for do what we think is right on the border, a true plan for security, but also that meets the workers, strict worker needs that we have, that does something different for America. So I'm asking you to hear it. I'm asking you to go to Binkley2024.com, check us out if you haven't heard from us, and follow us. Caucus for us, vote for us, share it with some friends. Say, I don't want the same old thing that I've had. If you're tired of the division, if you're tired of the debt, vote for Ryan Binkley. We need you and we need your help. I believe in America. I believe in Iowa. I believe in this process, and I believe in you. And I believe that God has something special for our days ahead. It's going to take faith for us to do that. And it's going to take God. And I believe God has a great plan for our country.
Well,
God bless.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Pastor, for being here. Pleasure. Thanks
Thank
for
you
being
so
here.
much. You did great.
There you go.